The Israeli military conducts ground raids targeting the Hamas militant group in the Gaza Strip and vowing more are to come.
EU leaders call for routine pauses in Israel's war with Hamas to guarantee safe and unhindered humanitarian access to Gaza.
In the midst of a vigil to remember those kidnapped by Hamas fighters in Israel on October 7, people run for cover as a siren warns of an incoming rocket in Tel Aviv. It was stopped by the Iron Dome defense system. The Israeli military says Hamas is using weapons manufactured in North Korea and Iran. It says the majority, though, are homemade. These are some of them said to have been found in southern Israel.
I think the most surprising thing was the amount of weapons that they brought inside Israel. They thought they can still put in place all those IEDs and use all those rockets. Of course, the IDF didn't let them do their mission.
Meanwhile, a rocket has crashed in the Egyptian resort town of Taba on the border with Israel. Witnesses say it hit a medical centre. At least 6 people were injured. Neither Israel nor Hamas have claimed responsibility. This is video released by Israel's military, said to show troops on the ground in the outskirts of Gaza City, targeting Hamas militants and locations. The operation, the second of its kind in as many days, also involved fighter jets and drones. Israel says it plans to step up the number of ground raids in the Strip in the coming days. Palestinian health authorities say more than 7,000 people, including nearly 3,000 children, have been killed in the Gaza Strip since the start of the Israel-Hamas war on October the 7th. The IDF says its ground incursions are laying the foundations for an all-out invasion against Hamas and to stop their planned attacks on Israel.
Families of Spanish-Israeli hostages calling for the safe release of their loved ones from Madrid. This is Mayan Segal Corin. 5 of her relatives are missing, including her mother. They were captured by Hamas militants 20 days ago and are reportedly being held captive in the Gaza Strip.
Vine aquí para pedir que España y todo el mundo y las comunidades democráticas no callen y exigen la liberación inmediatamente de mi madre y familia.
Some 1,400 people died in Hamas's unprecedented attacks on the 7th of October. Around 200 were kidnapped, including this young woman's father.
Recibimos una foto de mi papá con su pijama en Gaza, con 2 terroristas agarrándose de las manos.
Other relatives of hostages visited Brussels on Thursday, pleading for the European Union to act.
Et j'espère que les pays d'Europe vont nous aider à libérer nos otages, parce que j'ai des amis qui sont toujours vivants. Au moins, on sait qu'ils étaient vivants le 7 octobre. Peut-être ils ont été tués il y a une semaine, peut-être ils vont être tués dans 5 minutes. Mais pour nous, aujourd'hui, ce qu'on sait, c'est qu'ils sont toujours vivants. Donc j'espère qu'ils vont nous aider à les libérer et à condamner le Hamas.
And in the US, Jewish Senator Chuck Schumer met with families of hostages. According to Hamas, only 4 have been released.
After several hours of negotiations, EU leaders agreed a statement calling for routine pauses from hostilities in Gaza in order to allow humanitarian aid into civilians. The text calls for continued, rapid, safe and unhindered humanitarian access to reach those in need through all necessary measures. The EU also reiterated Israel has a right to defend itself in line with international humanitarian law, the rules in which armed conflict is conducted and designed to minimise civilian casualties. President of the European Council, Charles Michel, said a total siege in Gaza is not allowed under international law.
A total siege is not in line with the international law, and I confirm this is a principle of international law. A total siege is not in line with the international law. Many leaders address this topic of the siege, but there is one thing very clear. There is a serious deterioration of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and that's why we think that the EU should do everything which is possible in order to help resolve this question of the humanitarian access.
The EU is also committed to a regional peace conference in order to restart efforts to build a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. It was a compromise to Spain, who wanted stronger calls for a ceasefire. They also thanked countries from the region, such as Qatar, that have put pressure on Hamas to release hostages they kidnapped during the attack on Israel.
It is of utmost importance to speak with all the actors in the region. And I mentioned before the manifold visits of leaders to Israel, but also to other countries like Jordan or Egypt, for example. And it is very good that this outreach takes place, because we have to do everything possible to prevent a spillover in the wider region.
Leaders also discussed a review of the EU budget, with the possibility of increasing it to allow more funds for natural disasters, for migration and money for Ukraine. While all member states agree these issues require more funding, there's no consensus of where the money should come from. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
The moment a Chinese fighter jet nearly collided with an American B-52 bomber over the South China Sea. The US military says the Shenyang J-11 twin-engine aircraft was flying at a, quote, uncontrolled excess speed and came within 3 metres of its plane, putting both pilots in danger. Beijing says most of the South China Sea, one of the world's busiest trade routes, is in its territorial waters, a claim the US and countries that use the vast expanse of shipping reject.
As Russia's invasion of Ukraine grinds on, the lower house of parliament has voted to increase military spending by a staggering 68%. The budget will rise to the equivalent of around €109 billion, representing 6% of GDP. Moscow has already spent the equivalent of tens of billions of euros on its stalled Ukraine war. Russia's economy has been undermined by Western sanctions, but it's still earning vast sums from oil and gas sales.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukrainian forces are preparing for an autumn-winter Russian strike campaign against Ukraine and specifically against the country's energy infrastructure. Ahead of the second winter of Russia's full-scale invasion, Zelensky said, quote, "This year we will not only defend ourselves but also respond." Last winter was declared the most challenging in the history of Ukraine's energy system, with over 1,200 missiles and drones fired by Russians at power plants, according to Ukraine's state-owned grid operator Ukrenergo. The strikes impacted almost half of Ukraine's energy capacity. Since June 2023, Ukrainian forces have conducted a campaign of strikes against Russian military infrastructure, headquarters and logistics routes in Crimea in order to degrade the Russians' military ability to use Crimea as a staging and a rear area for Russian defensive operations in southern Ukraine. Zelensky stated that the Russian military is aware of Ukraine's intentions to strike Russian military infrastructure in Crimea, and Russia is moving the Black Sea Fleet away from Crimea and Russian aircraft further from the Russia's Ukraine border, likely in response to continued Ukrainian strikes against Russian naval and aviation assets.
A manhunt is underway in the U.S. state of Maine after 2 mass shootings yesterday in the city of Lewiston. Maine's governor says at least 18 people are confirmed dead and 13 wounded after a gunman opened fire at a restaurant and bowling alley. Law enforcement identified a suspect soon after the attack on Wednesday.
That approximately 6:56 this evening, a couple of shooting incidents occurred here with multiple casualties in the city of Lewiston. And police are currently searching for a Robert R. Card. Card is considered armed and dangerous.
County police have released footage of the man armed with a semi-automatic rifle. Card, a firearms instructor, was recently committed to a mental health facility. Officials have urged residents in Lewiston and nearby Auburn to stay indoors as the manhunt continues. Belgium authorities have arrested a Tunisian man in connection with a deadly attack in Brussels 10 days ago. The 44-year-old is accused of supplying an automatic weapon used to kill 2 Swedish football fans and has been charged with murder and attempted murder in a terrorist context whilst participating in terrorist activities. The suspected gunman, named as 45-year-old Abdesalem Lassoud, was shot dead by police the day after the attack. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility.
Newcastle and Italy midfielder Sandro Tonali has been banned from playing for 10 months and fined €20,000. The decision was made by the Italian Football Federation, which found he breached betting rules. The 23-year-old must also undergo counselling for his gambling problem. Part of that will include talking to young players about the dangers of betting. Tonali will be off the field until August. He'll also miss out on the Euro 2024 next summer, should Italy qualify.
An international gathering for a contest of gathering. Some 12 teams from different countries have taken part in the World Olive Picking Championship in the Croatian village of Postira. The teams, composed of 4 pickers, each had 45 minutes to pluck as many olives as they could.
It's cool. I had no idea what to expect when we came here. It's cool to meet so people from so many different countries. It's just a different thing. Also, none of us ever thought we'd get to represent our country in the World Championships. I'm picking what I'm talking.
It's actually my first time here in Croatia. It is exciting, and I'm very happy to be here to support this project, which is beautiful. And now let's just concentrate on the olives.
Croatia won for the 4th year in a row, with their haul weighing over 48 kilos. Neighbouring Montenegro came second. But there were honourable mentions for teams from Germany and Ireland, who did well despite having no tradition of olive growing in their countries.